Okay, we're going to start chapter 5 today and look at 5.1, the if-then else statement. This is our first of our series of branching statements we'll be looking at. These are important statements for coding. And one quick note, I'm fighting a cold, so my voice should be a little nasally. Sorry about that. So the if-then statement is written this way. You say if, and then some expression, and this expression is what we call a Boolean expression. It has to be either true or false. Then you have a bracket, and then you have some statements you want to execute, and these statements will be executed if this expression is true. And then you have a bracket, an else, and another bracket or brace. And then you have another statement, and this statement will only be executed if this expression is false. And then we have a closing brace here. So that's the basic structure, and the kind of metaphor we often think of is a division or that the code execution breaks up and divides. So like normally when you're running through your code, we're going line by line, one line after the other. Every line gets executed in order. But when we get to the if then, we have a decision. If this is true, we do these two lines. If this is false, we skip over those lines and do these two lines. Now once we get past if then, we keep going line by line through the code. So kind of the idea is, again, in this example, we might have some code to read in, ask the person what's their age and read that in. And then we have this if then, and when we branch, we either go on this branch or on this branch. But we never do both of these branches. Always just do one or the other. And then we get back together and we'll keep going with the prices, the code later on. And so that's why there's a picture up here of a stream. Yeah, you may not recognize this, but this is a stream that divides and then recombines at the end. So, so this is a very important concept, and we'll be using it a lot. It's used all over. So make sure you work through these examples. So you should be able to go through these examples. And again, remember that only the first lines will be executed always before the if-thens, but once we get to the if-then, either this one or this one will be done. And so depending on if it's true, so in this case, if bonus value is 5 and bonus value is less than 12, that's the question. Is bonus value less than 12? Well, 5 is less than 12, so that's true. So when we do this statement and not this statement. And so their answer is here, they're asking for a number of items, and at the end of this number of items would be 100 here. Okay, so go through these examples, get these all done. These are good practice and good thinking exercises to get you through these. Same here, you have to write out some if-then statements, learn the syntax. Remember, we use these braces in here, and we write that. So, and you can look up here again, if, and then in parentheses, we put the expression, and then we have a brace, another brace, else, and brace. And now usually the alignment of these, if sometimes the else might be on the same line as the braces, or sometimes this brace will be on a separate line, that's not too important. Just so we have a brace, an else, and a brace, and then a final brace here. Okay, so write these if then else's here. We go through a couple other examples. Now we look at when the else isn't included. The else is actually optional. You don't have to include an else. And sometimes you don't need it. And so this is an example of that. We're calculating the absolute value of a number. So we ask the user enter an integer. We read that in. That's user value. And then we're going to calculate the absolute value. And if you remember, for a normal number like 5, the absolute value is 5. But if it's a negative 5, the absolute value, we throw away the negative sign, and it's just, so negative 5, absolute value is 5. So we start out by just saying the absolute value is the user value, but that might not always work. If the absolute value is less than 0, we should get rid of the negative sign. And that's what we're doing here. We're saying absolute value times -1, and so if it's a -5 multiplied -1, that'll be a +5. But we only want to do this if it's a negative number. So again, we do this check. If this is true, then we do this. And so again, we can have an if, an expression, and without an else. The else is totally optional in this case. Okay, so you'll write, you'll evaluate some of these if-thens without else's as we go. And then we talked a little bit about this activity of the braces. And the braces are very important. So go through this and look at these values. The braces are actually optional when you write code, but they cause a lot of confusion if you don't put them in. So this shows you some of the confusion that can happen. If you don't have braces in here, like after an else, and you don't have braces, only the next one line of code is executed. No matter if this is indented or not, this line will always be done because if there's no braces. So after an if or after an else, if there's no braces, only a single line of code is executed. So this walks you through that activity, and there's some more questions here about this. And again, they'll try to fool you with some indenting stuff here, but again, after an if, there's only a single line is done, even if there are two lines indented. Now, there are other languages like Python which don't use braces and do use indenting. So if you learn Python at some point, it's kind of confusing coming to here. But in Java, we always use braces and block code off with braces, and not indenting is totally visual and doesn't have any real meaning to the code. And so when you actually write if-then statements, and in this class we will deduct points if you don't put braces around if-thens, because it's such a it's easy to generate errors if you don't use braces later on when you add things to the code. So okay, now we get down to a couple challenge activities, and again, this is a good way to test yourself and see how this works, and go through these challenge activities. Just realize that sometimes these challenge activities are kind of picky. These are running print lines and they're matching your output exactly, so I keep getting them wrong. So number of cats is 6, and if number of cats is greater than 2, so then we will print this out, and we'll print out a C, and it's a print line, so we go to the next line. We skip over this, and we always print out a K. But if I try to check that, it's going to tell me I got it wrong because I should have. It's a print line case, so there should be a little enter there. So, but these are good activities to go through and run these challenge activities to make sure you understand what we're getting at. And here you actually get to write an if-then statement. So that's your quick introduction with if-thens. We'll be spending the next few units on if-thens, and then you'll be using them throughout this whole course. So make sure you understand them.